Tēnā koutou katoa, ko aura ki te mauka, ko waitaki te awa, ko kaitahu kati māmoe me waitaha ka iwi, no kati i te kehu, te hapū, no koukou rārata o ku tipuna o ka wā o mua, o te rā, ka noho au kei te whanganui a tara i tēnei wā. Ko Rihari Richard rānei o ku ikoa noa, nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. My name's Richard, and I was born and brought up in Hawke's Bay, despite the fact that we're from Kaitahu, Kati Māmoe and Waitaha. From the time I was about 8 or 9, I knew what my sexual orientation was. I was a pretty bright young fella, but I'd also worked out that it wasn't a safe thing to share with anybody. There was no literature, I knew nobody that I could talk these things through. In fact, the only thing I remember being able to get any information out of, apart from what the priests said in the sermons at church, was in the abnormal psychology department of the Hastings Public Library, which of course was in the adult section, so I had access to that. Of course, I never checked those books out. I always went and read them at the library and then smuggled them back onto the shelves before anyone saw. But that was the only place where you could find any material publicly available about homosexuality, and of course it was highly clinical and not very encouraging, I have to say. Certainly my Māori identity was really quite strong. My gay identity, which is what I called it at that point, was really quite strong. And I still had an identity as a spiritual person, but I'd decided I was going off walking by myself for a while. So that was quite strong, and it always has been, and it always will be. I didn't have any role models in my family. I had nobody in my family that was gay, lesbian, rainbow, trans, takataapui identified at all. The only member of my family I actually told when I first started coming out was my sister. She was a first-year social work student at Massey at that point, and we were always close, and we still are. And about that point, I thought, I'm about to work for the AIDS Foundation, I'd better talk to my parents. So the rest of my immediate family then were notified that there was an issue that we had to traverse, and so they were not fully welcoming of the idea. I think it was a bit of a challenge, particularly for Mum. Mum's still a church-going lady, and she was probably took it a bit more difficultly than Dad, who was the sort of gruff farmer type, and I thought might actually be have a more difficult reaction. But he sort of seemed to take it in his stride. I think he patted himself on the back for that and thought that he'd earned some brownie points. But Mum, I think, had to do some bit of work with some friends to help process those things. But she's been fantastic. That was about 1990, so I'm nearly 30 years down the track, and Mum's always asking after my husband and how he's going and those sort of things. So I ended up working sort of side by side in some respects with Te Rōpū Tautoko, but also working in my own space with the support, and I developed some support from within our own local rūnaka. So that's the bit that sort of happened into the late 80s. Around that time, I ended up engaged with Te Rūnaka ki o Tautahi o Kaitahu, which is an urban Christchurch rūnaka of Kaitahu. And the elders, the council of elders there, and was very much a young fella, and would go to their meetings and got involved in voluntary work for the rūnaka as well, and being put into various committees and supporting events, and also then becoming an apprentice to the chair of the rūnaka in terms of learning te reo, learning tikanga, learning karakia, both in the church context, because he's a minister of the church, as well as in terms of tikanga o ka wā o mua. And of course there was the Marriage Equality Act in 2013, which was really, really important as well. The Human Rights Commission had a hand in all of those. But leading up to that was, and just before I got to the Commission, they published a report on the rights of trans people to be who I am. Published in early 2008, I joined the Commission in late 2008, and that was the result of an inquiry. That was the first time the Commission had used its powers of inquiry, and it was a significant piece of work that really highlighted the issues that trans people face in their lives, and some of the things that needed to be done at the political and at the government and even at the community level to address the huge inequity in human rights realisation for trans people. There's a loose coalition of rainbow groups, if you want, or people interested in this that have been making submissions over the years to the human rights instruments, and we've had considerable success in the very recent UPR that's come back with a number of recommendations that we need to get on with it. And that's a very good thing to have happened. I don't think the communities have really, I mean, this sort of just happened sort of over Christmas, New Year, so I don't think the communities have really caught up with that in any great way yet, but I suspect by the time Auckland Pride opens, there'll be some mention of that in some of the political statements that are made around Auckland Pride, and certainly Wellington Pride's coming up as well, Christchurch in a couple of months as well. So there's some real celebrations to be had, and I think the term takataapui is really helpful for us, because if we say takataapui, it doesn't say you have to be of a particular gender. It doesn't say you have to be of a particular gender identity. You can be trans, you can be cis, you can be who you are, and the term takataapui embraces that. That's how I read it. I don't have sole preserve on the definition of the term takataapui, but that's certainly how it is. I've been very comfortable using the term takataapui for myself for quite a long time, probably since the mid-90s. So my identity, I identify as a gay man and as takataapui, and if it's appropriate for me to announce my gender identity, then I'm cisgendered. I'm a takataapui person, but I'm also a middle-aged man, and I need to keep on top of my health and well-being. For me, it's really, really important to develop a good relationship with a general practice. And so I've just had to do that because I've come from Christchurch, I've come to Wellington, and I've sought out a general practice that I believe will meet my needs. So I've gone to Aotearoa, which is a PHO and a handful of medical practices run by Ngāti Toa iwi out in Porirua, but they also have a clinic here in Wellington, and I live in Wellington. But they were happy to take my husband and I as new patients, and I've had my first engagements with them, and I'm very impressed. So the whakawhanaungatanga in the first engagement, both with the nurse and the doctor, really, really important. And the conversations that I had with the doctor around, he wanted to know what was important to me. He knew that I was gay identified already because he'd read my notes, and I'd had those conversations with the nurse, and he wanted to know if my husband's coming to the same practice, and he was very clear to let me know that I'm very interested in health and well-being, and I'm not interested in judgment of any description. I think the most important thing for our takataapui people is that we are able to be who we are, and we're able to be who we are in all the contexts in our life.